Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the monastery, the open bar of the internet, the world's greatest shit show, and the place where we, the good brothers and sisters of this most holy of temples, seek enlightenment through the drunkest, craziest, and most batshit ways possible. I am your one and only gaming monk, better known as Mildra, and with me I have a newcomer into the temple, creator of the Tales of the Kytin Age, which we'll be getting into. I'll be getting into today. The one and only Kythonus G, aka Geoff Gray. How you doing today, man?
Hi. Hello to all your listeners, and hi, Mildred. I'm doing okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. So, I'll start with the humble beginnings, as I often do with these things. So,
Okay.
walk me through your first introduction to role-playing games and what made it stick.
I'm not really sure what made it stick, other than it proved to be a very nice place to escape. I had a bit of a rough childhood. Uh, Parents not so great, um, and I discovered my first game. Um, like I was saying earlier, the meta games, the fantasy trip, and associated small board games when they were like sealed in a small plastic bag with paper maps.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and yeah, I think about 10, I started to design my own very basic little board games, uh, based kind of around those. Um, I was a voracious reader from an early age, um, and everything about the gaming hobby, even as nascent as it was back in the 70s,
Mm-hmm.
it just really appealed to me. The combination of fiction, and the literature and the efforts needed to write a scenario, for gaming friends, um, and then drawing the maps. That really appealed to my artistic sensibilities, um, and it was a whole combined package of yeah, a lot of good creative skills, um, and the fact it was a nice place to disappear from the vagaries of growing up
Mm-hmm.
in Blackpool in the UK back in the 70s.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I can
Um,
I can certainly get that. Oh,
and it's something I've never really grown out of, unfortunately.
mm-hmm.
Unfortunately,
Yeah.
uh, I've got a lot of friends, um, and a surprisingly amount of still extant friends. We're all in our mid 50s now,
Mm-hmm.
and most of them grew out of the hobby. Um, when they got to the late teens and discovered um, nightclubs and young ladies, um, and yeah, so and work, etc. And you
Mm-hmm.
know how things go.
Oh yeah.
Groups separate, people split up, people move away, careers, etc. But somehow, remarkably, I'm still just as avid, and I love the hobby now just as much as I've always done.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really nice to know,
Yeah. Now,
I'm still as immature as I was then.
now you had in your description you had said that you had begun developing the Kytin Age all the way back in '89. So
Yeah,
when it comes to the origin of it, let's go into that because Tales of the Kytin Age is doing a different approach in this very far future I'd almost say post-apocalypse.
It- Yes, that's a good yeah, that's a good
Which,
description.
for context, what I mean by post-apocalypse, I use that to describe what could be considered a post-apocalyptic setting, but so much time has passed from when the proverbial bomb dropped, even if that bomb is not a bomb, that new civilizations, cultures, and the like have not only sprang up but have firmly rooted themselves.
That's right. And many civilizations, proto-civilizations, have, uh, have have attempted to rise up and have failed over several thousand years,
Hmm.
which is a really good adventure hook, um, because you can, even though the world of the contemporary Kytin age is they're enjoying like a renaissance, a real golden age at the moment, but from our time to then, many attempts at rebuilding civilization have failed. But in different pockets of the survivors have attempted to create their own civilization completely differently. So when you're writing a scenario, there's an independent DM or hive keeper, as we
Hmm.
call the referees of the kiting age. Um, you can base it from any. You can just go really the sky's your limit. You could base it on some old Indian or Asian cultures or whatever you want. Because there's no real hard and fast rules to what you can do in
Hmm.
the remote areas of the world.
Oh yeah.
Uh, Entirely because of what you've said. There is such a it's post apocalyptic, and things like The Last of Us, and you're the generic post apocalyptic games, all that like Mad Max, etc. All that could easily have occurred in the history of the Kyten Age, but you're talking thousands of years prior to the game time.
Yeah. I mean, if I had to use a contemporary example of post-apocalypse, this might be a bit of a stretch, but I'd bring up Conan. And
Okay.
I know that sounds ridiculous, but hear me out. One of the big conceits with Conan is that it is the massive fallout from the essentially the end of Atlantis.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
and which of course is seen as this spire of civilization, and a lot of people dealing with with the day-to-days after that. It's not a one-to-one, obviously, and there's a whole lot more going into that. I suppose if one wanted to stretch it, maybe Thundar the Barbarian could also count, but there's arguments to be made on either side of the fence on that. The key thing is that the apocalyptic event is so far removed from the current day to days. Uh,
Okay. That sounds a fair comparison.
Now, speaking of that, before it, as a bit of a setup to my next question, are you familiar with the concept of Appendix N?
No.
So, Appendix N was a section that was in early D&D books that contained inspirational media from film, from TV, from sometimes games, sometimes comics, etc. It's been used as a shorthand for for a section where someone describes the inspirations of a given work. Um,
Okay. Yeah. Your influences.
yeah,
Right.
what would what would Kytin Age's influences be in that regard?
Okay. Well, first and foremost, I would say Hayao Miyazaki's Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind.
Hmm.
If you're familiar with that,
Oh yeah.
it was a very large manga,
Hmm.
and then subsequently made into a rather woeful anime, um, Warriors of the Wind, uh,
I
back in
never
the late
saw
80s.
the infamous Warriors of the Wind. The version that I always saw was the one that came after that. Though
Right.
I'm well aware of the rumor that, and I don't think Miyazaki has ever confirmed this. I don't think he ever will. That supposedly he sent a katana to the Miramax office with a note saying no cuts when there was the possibility that Spirited Away might get edited for its international release.
Yeah, I can imagine that. But however, the latest Disney re-edition of it, it's very similar, other than the overdubs. But yeah, Nausicaa was certainly a huge influence. Uh, and if the Tales of the Kytin Age
Mhm.
transpires to be any kind of a success, I would very much like to have an opportunity to work on an official RPG or board game for it set in that universe that Miyazaki created. Um, in fact, I did sit down for several months writing out. Okay, this is what I'm going to. This will be preparation for a Ghibli, a Nausicaa RPG. But I
Mhm.
soon realised that it was incredibly, as good as it was very limiting for me. Um, and the adventures that I could set in that world. Because the more you stray away from the storyline presented in that, you're creating your own stuff, your own lore. And I didn't think that that would be relevant to such a personal thing of Miyazaki's.
Mhm.
Um, and and so the more I was thinking about, and I've always been an amateur entomologist, and the real thing about the Nausicaa story was the toxic jungles, giant insects. Um, so I thought I'd lean into that and use my own experience and knowledge of bugs uh, and arachnids, um, and really make that a big draw for the game.
Mhm.
Um, and it just kind of evolved from there. But there's a great deal of different influences. Very much the movies of the late 70s and the 80s,
Mhm.
especially Escape from. I can't really. I don't know what to reveal about the time of the what we call the Day of Fire. Now that is a complete. I, People might think, oh, it's a rip off of Miyazaki, but it is genuinely sincere homage that I've tried to pay a great deal of respect uh, to Miyazaki's work. So, but there's certain things I
Mhm.
really wanted to get in there. So, I've cut, I've termed the day of the apocalypse the day of fire,
Yeah.
which is very obviously uh,
And if I'm being
taken
honest, the
from.
term ripoff has been vastly flanderized, almost genericized. It's been stretched to the point of being useless. Oh,
Yeah, okay. Well, there's enough that it wears its influences on its sleeve. The Tales of the
yeah.
Counting Age.
Everyone's going to be doing that. What I think the dividing line is when one wears their influences on their sleeve, but also adds to the pile in their own way. Uh,
Yeah, and I think I've done that.
mhm.
I've really attempted to do that. Um, And there's a lot of other influences in there that I can't really go into without doing a huge spoiler for,
Yeah.
for the second part of the game, because there is a sequel storyline,
Mhm.
which is a huge thing, and it's already built into the first core book, and the whole lore of the world. So when the second book comes out, which is like a sequel game,
Mhm.
uh, introducing vastly different technology, um, no one can say, "Oh, it's just an afterthought and it's just been bolted on." Um, it's all part of the huge storyline, uh, and part of the world. So there are lots of little Easter eggs to be found in the core book that really don't make sense until the sequel comes out.
Mhm.
Uh, but it just adds to the depth and to the flavour, of the world.
Oh yeah, I can certainly get that. Now, speaking on speaking on that, as I understand it, the core mechanic with Tales of the Kytin Age is a aim high, uh, aim high D20 affair. You know, D
Aim low, gotta roll
oh
low.
oh aiming low because
I am so lucky at rolling dice,
uh
that I always roll too low whenever I'm playing board games and stuff. So I thought, well, in my game, I'm going to make
yeah,
sure that when I roll low, I
which
win.
okay, I will correct I will correct myself on that. Uh, but
And
even
and
though e-
sorry,
even though you're using a D20 as the core mechanic here,
yeah,
when I looked at the character sheet, the game
yeah,
that immediately ended up springing in my mind was basic role playing from Chaosium,
exactly, yeah,
and I'm curious
yeah,
if that was a major influence.
yeah, yeah. RuneQuest, um, the Games Workshop edition. I'm not sure whether it was the second. I think it could have been the second or the third edition that was released in the UK by Games Workshop.
Hmm.
That was like the first proper big game where I did a 3 year campaign. Um, and yeah, I don't think there's any other system really that could beat the basic role playing, the D100 percentile skill system. It's perfect. Um, but and I might get into trouble for this. I hope I don't put too many people off and they start cancelling the pledges.
Yeah. Also,
Um,
I double checked the the Games Workshop version was second edition. Um,
right. So yeah, second edition RuneQuest, and
mhm.
then of course Sandy Peterson's Call of Cthulhu.
Yep.
I think that came out in '84. Um,
Hmm.
um, and we played Cthulhu.
Yeah. Did
Still do.
did you ever play
Um,
Stormbringer?
yeah. Well, no, I didn't play it, but I bought all the stuff because I like the Elric of Melniboné
Hmm.
stories from Moorcock. Um, Still got all those on my bookshelf. Uh, in addition to a huge library of Lovecraftian um, books.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah. And
but yes, you're right. Basic role playing, but mainly through RuneQuest,
mhm.
and all those Chaosium ones. I think it's a fantastic system. Um, but even a D100 can be simplified by dividing it up into 5 percentiles, and therefore you can just roll a D20 as opposed to a D100.
Mhm.
And when we were really playing the first incarnation of Tales of the Kytin Age, when it used to be called the Venom X, real 90s,
Oh
real
yeah.
90s title then. Um, we were kids. We were young old adolescents, teenage, between 16 and 20, and we were partying a lot. we were drinking, smoking, and Fridays and Saturday nights it was game night and party night.
Mm-hmm.
And we'd come home from the nightclubs at 2 in the morning, and it'd be like, well, let's get a game on, and we'd play till 10 the following morning. And we just kind of fall asleep amongst the dice and the character sheets.
Mm-hmm.
And basically, if the game couldn't be played in a rather inebriated state, it was like, that's not a very good game. So so I had to come up to make sure my gaming group would remain focused on the game, on the story. It was like, okay, we've got to make the mechanics really, really straightforward, almost intuitive. So hence the D20.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not sure when D&D and the whole D20 system became really popular, but it was certainly later than 1989.
Yeah.
Um,
I'd say if there's.
I remember feeling the cold, clammy hand of panic when I first saw that D&D had done the D20 system and made it like an open license.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of thing, so people could use the D20. But I've never really played Dungeons and Dragons, to be honest, since the late 70s.
Yeah.
Second edition D&D. So I don't know. I've certainly never played Dungeons and Dragons whilst it's been using that D20 system that it does.
And if I'm being honest, the closest one of the closer parallels I'd say to this sort of roll under using a D20 that I've encountered would be things like Fading Suns is a major one, but also Pendragon, especially in the last. Now I haven't touched Pendragon 6th edition yet. The last one I touched was 5th. But that shifted from the D100 to a D20, but still maintained that roll under approach.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Well, that's obviously very similar then.
And
Well,
Fading Suns isn't. It's doing it that, but I've nicknamed Fading Suns' approach D20 Blackjack, since it's roll under, but you're trying to get as close to the line as you can.
When you say the line, you mean like as low as possible?
No, you're trying to aim high, but only to a point. So if you
okay,
because if your target number is 10, obviously you're trying to get 10 or below. But you get a higher degree of success the closer you get to 10 without going over it.
Okay, well, similar to mine, but mine is Kytin age is the lower that you get, the more your degrees of success are greater.
Which I can certainly get, because given that, would it be a case of a exceptional success as if you get a straight 1?
Yeah. Well, that's an automatic, like, critical auto success. Yeah. But by having it like that, the degrees of difference, I've labeled my system like the difference system, because it drops down into categories of like 5 numbers. So you can roll not only below your target number, if you can roll beyond 5 beyond your target number, then it goes from an acceptable success to a great success. And then 10 below that number becomes an exceptional success. And it allows then, as characters get their skills up into the higher teens, their chances of making superior successes, it becomes greater. Yeah, but it doesn't it doesn't negate an opportunity for a lower level character to gain a greater degree of success than a higher level character. So there is an opportunity for a Jack the Giant Slayer kind of situation.
Yeah.
Which is obviously really important.
Yeah, that's going to be part of the appeal with dice setups. Now, beyond that, aside from the folk, would it be fair for me to say that you're going a bit freeform when it comes to characterization, where you're not really doing you might be doing broad archetypes, but you're not doing classes in the traditional sense?
That's right, and I think that again is probably going back to basic role playing and RuneQuest, where you get a bunch of percentile points that you can then distribute as you wish all over the place to have either very specific orientated characters or real jacks of all trades. What I've tried to do is balance that, so you get a bunch of points that you can then allocate as you see fit, but a character can join a guild at an early age, so you get a few more points to distribute, but you are told where to distribute them, as it were. Like a warrior, you'd get a certain set of skills that all the warriors are trained with. But beyond that, you do learn that you have access to other skills, such as your character's parents may well train your character in some skills that they've got from their guild allegiances. When your character's growing up, they're in their adolescent period. There is an opportunity there to distribute and allocate skill points on skills that may not have anything to do with their future career or future guild. It's more like childhood hobbies. So throughout the character generation process, there are different times where you get points that you can then allocate. And if you don't want to be in a guild and you just want complete freeform, then you can play an ungilded character. You don't get guild benefits, which are kind of wide ranging, above and beyond purely skill distribution. But you do get the freedom to basically spend a ton of points in whatever you want. So there is a lot of freedom in the character generation, but if you want to go specific, then you can, and that's allowed, accommodated.
But it also appears that one of the early major steps within character creation is choosing one of the 4 forms of being, as you refer to it.
Yeah.
Neotypes, metamorphs, telepaths, and insectiles. And with each of them, would they grant a particular package of skills out of the gate before you even pick what skills you're going to be going with?
Not skills per se, more abilities. Your neotypes, who are like 80% of the population, they're the common folk. They tend to be burly, heavier set, certainly more strong, more healthy. So you're going to get a bonus on your health. And each, no matter which set you have, no matter which form of being you choose, you will have a menu system. So in character generation, very little is left to chance. Very little is left to, if there's something beyond the player's scope, then you use the dice to have a random result, such as what kind of parents you have, what form of being are your character's parents. That's well beyond the a player to decide. So yeah, that's left to chance.
Mm-hmm.
But anything that absolutely impacts their character, it's all down to player choice using a pros and cons method of choosing abilities or mutations. And they're presented like a menu. So a Neotag, for example, there's over 20 plus different mutations, all with their own pros and cons. Now, some of them are incredibly mild. You might just have very exotic coloured skin pigmentation, or you might have 2 pairs of legs and 3 pairs of arms.
Mm-hmm.
You know, on the other extreme. And so and you can have different amounts of mutations as well. So if you just wanted a really slightly mutated person, because you couldn't really grasp an image in your mind of what that mutant character could be like. So okay, I'll just be basically a human. I might have a tail, and I might make them purple skinned. Okay, well, my daughter would probably like that. She would not like to be forced into playing a multi-armed Shiva-esque character that is then encumbered with dual wielding or quad wielding skills, because that's obviously going to impact your combat experience. And then your insectiles. Now the insectiles are slightly more complicated. I'd say that they were a more advanced player option, because each of those, no matter which, let's say a honeybee, okay, say you're going to choose a honeybee as what we call the ascendant insect, which would be the insect responsible for your family's mutation into sharing the DNA of an insect. If your father or your grandfather or somebody way, way, way back in your family tree has survived an insect attack, and that insect carries a very potent form of what we call opterophage, which is a virus communicated by body fluids, venoms, saliva, etc. Well, not saliva, but the equivalent of saliva. If they manage to survive that, it's their offspring who will show the effects of the mutation, and then that's programmed into the entire family line to the end of time. But even so, you choose one ascendant insect, whether it be a tarantula spider, an orb weaver spider, or a multitude of beetles. None of those has to be the same, because each one has got a menu system of, okay, well, you want wings, you can have wings. Do you want one pair of wings or 2 pairs of wings? And you might have 3 players, you're all playing dragonfly insectiles, but you're all different. You've all got different coloration, you've all manifested the mutations in completely different ways. So yeah, it's pretty customizable, and it's very rare that you get 2 identical player characters, even if they're from the same form of being.
Yeah, I can certainly get that. Now, with that in mind, there were a couple parts on the character sheet that I was a bit curious going into, and that is telepathic and metamorphic abilities.
Okay. Due to my inability of parsing spell chapters in previous role-playing games, especially, we were talking earlier about Rolemaster. Well, I could not for the life of me get my head around spell casting in Rolemaster. It was a real pain. So it was house ruled to fun, and also magic really doesn't play a role in in the real world of the Kytin age as such. Um, so we've, rather than spells, chosen to go with abilities that work very similar to skills. So once you've figured out how the skills work, you can figure out how your abilities work, and they're probably the most um, supernatural of, of things in the game.
Mm-hmm.
But they're natural abilities as opposed to spells or divine powers.
Mm-hmm. I was actually going to lean into more psychic than spell based on what I was seeing.
Yeah, well, I'm saying that they're the equivalent of spells. You've got the telepathic abilities, of reading minds, very Jedi-like.
Yeah.
All the telepathic spells, skills, sorry, are very much like your Star Wars Jedi. Um, it's all changing people's emotions
Mm-hmm.
and perspectives of the world around them.
Yeah. Though, would it be fair to say that they are resolved in a way similar to how skills are resolved?
Yeah,
I I can, which that is something I can get. And going further into that, what is DCA? Would that be like the resource that's expended when using these abilities?
exactly. And that's daily cell activity. That's what DCA stands for.
All right.
Uh, and it is the equivalent of mana or magic power. You're absolutely right. It's just a resource, but I've tried to make it more organic, and it's all about your cell activity,
Mm-hmm.
especially with the metamorphs, because they're like shape changers.
Yep.
So it requires an intense amount of willpower to undergo these physical Cronenberg-esque body horror, uh,
Mm-hmm.
fleshlight.
Yeah. And
I'm sorry.
I suppose one of the other reasons I brought up that that it seems to lean into a more freeform affair has to do with the advancement set up with skill marks, which is very much a hallmark of basic role playing, the way you have it set up, of you're developing skills by using them essentially.
Yes, yeah, and I think that's like the most. I've never really got my head around how experience points earned from killing a goblin can then be used to boost, uh, your other abilities or whatever. Um, it's just it just makes common sense that if you're gonna chop down trees all day, your chop down tree skills are going to be really high.
Hmm. Well, you're gonna have to be better at it, because you don't. If you're chopping trees, you want to make sure that the tree doesn't fall on you. That'd be embarrassing.
Indeed.
Uh, and I only say that because I guarantee there was some story of somebody chopping it up improperly and getting hit.
Yeah. Well, I was just using that as a very basic analogy or example.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, the more you do things, the more that particular skill. But the thing with basic role playing and Cthulhu and RuneQuest was always very ad libbed when it came to experience games. Like check your skill, okay, maybe 2 3 times per session. So that's why I put the skill mark boxes.
Hmm.
So you have to use your skills a certain amount of times, and then you have an opportunity to see whether your character learns from that experience, which they do by going to sleep
Hmm.
and resting on the matter.
Oh yeah, I can certainly get that. Now, with that in mind,
Yeah.
uh, one of the other things I found interesting that you put into the character sheet, and I know I'm bringing up the sheet, but sometimes
No,
you
it's
can
fine.
study it.
It's
You
really nice
can,
to know that you had a look at it and you've studied it.
yeah,
That's
you
great.
can
Thank
glean
you.
a lot. You can glean a lot from the way a game works just by looking at a character sheet sometimes. But
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
since there's a whole section about tourneys, I'm guessing that tournaments are a significant thing within the core book.
Well, they were a significant thing in the game world. Um, they're not really. They don't apply in the core book
Hmm.
uh, because in the main setting of the game, which is Franzia,
Hmm.
um, which is the equivalent. It's France,
Hmm.
but kind of changed due to climate and rising sea levels and active volcanoes and rather seismic shifts in the Earth's crust.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, that's in the Western Kingdoms, which Franzia is part of. They have these monthly um, drafting tournaments, and it's just something for the player characters to get involved with if they choose to do so. And you can have a party whose entire campaign revolves around following the tournaments from kingdom to kingdom
Hmm.
every month, and then getting ready, preparing for the grand tourney, which is held once a year in a particular kingdom.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like a sub game kind of
Hmm.
thing, or a side activity that
Yeah.
a hivekeeper can make or reduce the importance of in a campaign.
Hmm.
But yeah, tournaments are good fun. Tourneys.
Yeah. And that whole thing of going from tournament to tournament, well, that's half of the plot of A Knight's Tale as it is. So, in good company.
Yeah. I was trying to play up the medieval analogies as well.
Hmm. Uh, which is definitely fair. Uh, Now I know we talked about guilds, and I did look at the different occupation guilds that you have on the website. A lot
Yeah.
of them were pretty self-explanatory, but there were a few that I wanted to get a bit more context as far as what they particularly do. Um,
Okay. Well,
um,
Cheyenne Mana
yeah,
come into this.
Cheyenne definitely one of them,
Uh, yeah.
and the other one was the gutter flies. Um,
Okay.
what can you tell me about those two?
Okay. Well, let's take the gutterflies first.
Hmm.
They might be easier and quicker to explain. Um, Rather than having a thieves guild, 'cause I can't really perceive the thieves, independent bands of thieves uniting closely enough to have um, a kingdom-wide guild. Um, but you obviously want to if there are players who want to have a thieves guild style character,
Hmm.
um, the characters just basically grow up on the streets, and you've heard of the expression a gutter snipe.
Yes.
So yeah, gutter fly. Uh, yeah, the kids brought up on the streets, outcasts, orphans, usually taken in by a Fagin-like character, uh, and then yeah, and then embarking on a life of crime.
Hmm.
But, so yeah, that's your thieves uh, occupation, growing up on the streets as a gutter fly.
All right, I can get that.
And then the Shine Mana. Now the
Hmm.
Shine Mana is huge, huge in the game. Um, they're responsible, they're directly responsible for the current renaissance that's occurring in the game world when the players take the stage. Uh, hailing from the east, um, the Shine Mana are a sect of humanists, really telepathic humanists,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and they've been sent forth to all corners of the known world to reunite the disparate tribes of men. Because only together can humankind really re-establish themselves, um, and assert themselves as not only a dominant force in the new world, uh, but as a surviving force in the new world. Um, so you've in the immediate aftermath of well, not in the immediate aftermath, a couple of thousand years after the Day of Fire,
Mm-hmm.
when mankind has slowly started to return to the surface, um, and encounter the giant insects for the first time. They've established small fortifications, whether it's in the ruins of the metro, uh, or old buildings, or some far remote deep forest location,
Mm-hmm.
um, like Aboriginal tribesmen. They're untrustworthy of each other. You get the bands of marauding humans preying upon other survivors. Um, Smaller factions that grow into larger ones and then start fighting amongst themselves, um, for resources. It's kind of difficult to sustain when the natural world is so dangerous. Not only do you have the great insects, but the terrain, the foliage, the
Mm-hmm.
weather, everything's out to kill you. And basically, humankind needs an outside agency to come and knock their heads together and beat some sense into each other for a general good of the whole of the whole race,
Mm-hmm.
of the whole survival of the species. Um, so so the pacifist Cheyenne Mana, that's their mission. Now they're kind of quasi-religious. There are no there is no formal religion in the Kytin age.
Mm-hmm.
There are sects and cults. You might get some remote tribes um, worshipping some forest spirit or some ancient desert dwelling uh, created deity.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but on the whole, the organized religion doesn't really exist. The closest that you've got are the humanitarian um, tenets of the Shrine Mana, which is basically be cool to each other.
Mm-hmm.
And because unless you work together, you're doomed. Um,
Yep.
so yeah, they're like a very easy analogy would be the Jedi Knights of
I was
Star
actually
Wars.
going to I was actually going to suggest that or different orders, different monastic orders throughout history,
Yeah, yeah,
because they do strike me
uh,
more as monks than as priests. Even though monks have held double duty as priests when the need arises.
yeah. And in the game, it's very interchangeable. That word. Some people refer to them as priests. Some people refer to them as monks. I usually prefer them just as the missionaries of the Cheyenne Mana.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, and obviously everybody likes Jedi Knights, and I thought that would be pretty cool to throw those into what is essentially a medieval world setting.
Yeah, I had a conversation with a friend of mine not too long ago where we had talked about how the concept of Jedi has shifted over the years. Because the you know starting with with this fusion dance between knights and samurai, and evolving into
Yeah,
something that is far more akin to wuxia. Not just because of the wire fu with some of the films, but in the philosophy. Uh,
okay.
but that's but getting past that, since there's
But
talk of
we're
a
going back to the going back to the influences of Naushka of the Valley of the Wind.
mhm,
Uh, he as a character would be a Cheyenne Mana. I wanted to create um, a system and a class, as it were,
mhm,
um, where you could, where the main character of the Valley of the Wind would probably fit in, and it's Nausicaa's uh, her frame of mind and her philosophies
mhm.
that have really I've tried to capture in the Cheyenne Mana. It just so happens to be very Jedi-like.
Yeah,
So
I could see it.
if you did a deep character study of Nausicaa from the Valley of the Wind, you would see where the thought processes would have come in to then lead to the creation of the Cheyenne Mana as a as an organization.
Mhm. Now, since there's a spot for guild rank uh,
Yeah,
within the character sheet, I'm curious if going up the ranks is more about the kind of pull you have within that guild, more than a sort of stat change, or are there skill bonuses that you would get from going up guild ranks?
no, it's just responsibility
Hmm.
and opportunities become more available to you. But you might, you really might not want to advance in your particular guild um, because you don't want to stay at home looking after newbies.
Hmm.
Um, if you're a high-ranking guild member, you might prefer to just remain at a certain low rank, so you're out on the field a bit more. And it all depends on where the games master wants to take your campaign, and the players. You
Hmm.
could completely have a campaign where you just never leave the city. You could have it will be all diplomacy or musicianship or um, just low life thieves. You never have to go into the wilderness at all.
Hmm.
Um, and so it all depends on the particular guild, what those what the ranks will do for you.
Yeah.
Some of them become exceptionally binding.
Hmm. Yeah, I can certainly get that. So with the upcoming book, where are you shooting for as far as its particular page count?
It's 344 pages.
Hmm. Which I'd say is fairly standard fare for for a core book um, of this kind of complexity. Uh,
Yeah.
and as far as a release window, where are you shooting for? Not a hard date, but a general estimate
Of what? Delivery?
uh, of release when it comes to say the digital versions. Since
I want the
obviously,
digital version. Now, you might want to correct me if I'm wrong, but I want the digital versions to be available at the same time the people who've got the physical versions receive theirs. I don't really want anybody to get a head start on anybody else. I want to keep it fair. We've got a big games expo in the UK next year. I just hope I really want to show off the game and to hopefully sell some copies at the expo. But if that would really help cash flow.
Mhm.
But if by that time, if there's some kind of fulfillment issues or whatever, if the backers haven't received their copies, I won't be selling them retail or privately beforehand.
Oh yeah, I can get that.
And we're looking at May, then early May for at the latest for fulfillment of the current Kickstarter.
All right, I can certainly get that.
We want to. I'd prefer to under promise and over deliver.
Mm-hmm.
But if people can just have May in their mind, early May, and that would be a good estimate. But obviously, we're doing our best to make sure that is delivered well in advance, but can't make any promises.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, and with that in mind, I do want to sincerely thank you for taking the time out of your schedule. I'll certainly be looking forward to seeing how the Kytin Age develops. But
I thank you for giving me the opportunity to come and talk to you about it.
And anytime you see fit to return, the door is always open. As I often say around here, drinking is not mandatory, but it is encouraged.
Yeah. Okay. Excellent. All right. Well, thank you. Are there any other things that you'd like to quickly cover?
Yeah.
Call it?
I think we covered everything I needed to without going too far into the weeds. But and of course, a sincere thanks goes out to everyone who took the time out of their schedule to come onto the show and enjoy the madness. And there will be plenty more where that came from, as there always is here on the open bar of the internet. But until then, on behalf of the good brothers present and not present, my name is Mildra. I am your gaming monk. Stay fucking frosty, everybody.
Sure, like 年々重心気